Hi, welcome to the first episode of Echo Chamber. I'm Kaylee.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I've got one very important question, Haley, before we start. What is an echo chamber?
Being in an echo chamber means hearing only one set of ideas, or just one side of the story, which makes it hard to form your own opinion.
And that's why we're trying to escape the echo here on Echo Chamber. In today's episode, we're going to be doing exactly that by talking about social media.
Let's get into it.
I have a very potent question for you,
Potent?
Kaylee.
Yes, Julia.
Do you think we should stop using social media? Like,
Absolutely.
what's your social media take? I'm interested.
Um, social media take.
Mm-hmm.
I think social media is bad for a couple of reasons.
I think it was John Stuart Mill who argued this, like an old philosopher or whatever. But John Stuart Mill said something along the lines of like, you have to engage ideas in a space where every perspective can be heard, no matter how shit that perspective is.
Mhm.
So he was saying, like, if I come to you with an idea that, whatever, it's an idea, and you come to me with an idea, like, even if we think one of them's, like, morally terrible or, like, pretty bad, we should still bring it to the table. The good idea will win, and we will have strengthened our good idea, thus
Mhm.
making it better and thus making us understand our good idea better. Because
Mhm.
in order to understand something, you have to be able to support it through the counter arguments that are presented to you, right?
Right.
So the problem with social media, one of the many problems of social media, is that it creates such an echo chamber. So you're only interacting with people who have the exact same view as you do.
Mm.
And it's very easy to stay in this echo chamber.
Mm.
And because, like, social media, the algorithms will keep recommending you things that you want to see. And then in your life, that issue is so much bigger than it is in somebody else's life because you're looking at it 3 hours a day on your social media feed.
Mhm.
And
It's
you're
a
only
closed
getting
worldview.
very closed worldview, and you're only getting one perspective. So that's like when you ask somebody on social media to defend their argument, they don't, some of them won't really know what to say because it's like they haven't seen the other side.
No, it's a very specific rhetoric, and I know what you mean. What you learn in school and what you're learning outside of school are equally as important. And we're being fed
Mm.
such specific niche information. So we do
Hmm.
think that we're catastrophizing everything. Because the
Oh yeah.
reality is a lot of the stuff that makes headlines in the news only affects like 2% of people nationally.
Hmm.
And that's not a large perspective, and we cannot make laws and moral regulations or anything based on the minority of people. Our country doesn't run on that. Like if we start doing that, it's going to make a much worse living environment for the majority of people, which is just a general decline in society.
Hmm.
But with this very specific feed of information that we're getting, like you scroll on TikTok and you see the same video at least 3 times in a 15-minute period. We it's it's such a very specific narrative, and I
Hmm.
absolutely hate it. There's something to be said about finding community, because in
Of
and
course.
only when you're only interacting face to face and you have a very specified interest, it's really hard to find people that like the same things as you.
Oh yeah.
So there is a there's definitely a benefit of social media where you can access things that you wouldn't originally be able to access. But I think that doesn't outweigh the risk of keeping the constant, you know, social. I mean, people are just losing the ability to communicate too.
Yeah.
Because okay, there's another study done um about the manifestation of contempt, and they said that the number one um indicator of divorce was eye rolling in marriage. So it's like a very, very tiny thing that manifests as this big thing. So it's like using like WTF and LOL. It's depersonalizing the statement. So no one knows
Mhm.
how to communicate. So even if you do find someone who can argue their beliefs, it's like, oh well, IDK. Like,
Yeah. It's also something I have found quite recently because I deleted all my social media a while ago off my
mhm,
phone. Like I'll still use it like on my iPad and my laptop sometimes, but it's gone off my phone, right?
right.
And I have found that before, I used to have such a problem with just existing in the present moment. Like, I would, even brushing my teeth, I would have to have like a YouTube video playing. And that sounds just as sad as it is. But I'd like have to have a YouTube video playing or like a podcast while I took a shower or like while I was cooking, I'd have to like be talking to somebody or like be doing something else. And I feel like that takes away a lot of like the sense of fulfillment that you get from even little activities like making your bed in the morning, you know? But
Mhm.
like I'm not going to do that because I'd rather watch YouTube, but now I'm like more in this mindset where it's like no, let me just eat like without watching anything like any YouTube videos or
Period.
let me just sit on the bus and not be on my phone and
That bitch
just
era.
yeah, bad bitch era. But like I feel like I have much more of an ability now to be in the present moment and like experience what's right in front of me. And that makes my day feel a lot more fulfilled than it otherwise would if I was just constantly scrolling through social media, which is what my day used to look like.
Yeah, I think
So,
it's what everyone days look like. I mean, on average,
mhm.
the person that what's crazy is they did a study of like the increase of like screen time from 10 years ago to now. And really there has been a lot of technological development between 10 years ago and now, but
Mhm.
not like oh my god, we didn't have phones back then. So there was technology to be on. There were things to interact with, there were people to talk to, and what I find crazy is that most people's screen time is like at least 9 hours a day now, particularly in
Mhm.
our age group. And that's
It's
fucking crazy to
insane.
me because you're at school for like 6 or 7 of those hours.
Mhm.
Like how the fuck do you spend 9 hours a day on your phone when you're at school for more than half of the day?
Literally.
It's like a compulsive thing. But
It's
the
so
other
scary.
primary problem that I have with social media is I think it pushes the idea of being a celebrity and like image management to people who have no business.
This is
No business.
so interesting because in class, I think this was also under the John Stuart Mill umbrella. Don't quote me on that though. But we were talking about the idea that okay, in a capitalist society, obviously to be a part of the economy, you're selling something, right?
Mhm.
So in the past, the only thing that people were able to sell was material goods. Now people are selling images and ideas. Like that is what the job of an influencer is selling. Like if you look
Mhm.
at it very through the lens of capitalism, like they're not like selling a product except for like merch or whatever, but the main thing that they're selling is their image.
Yeah, the only
And
reason they sell merch is because they have an image.
and it's like their branding, like that's a huge part of their image. So it's like we are now literally selling ideas to people. We are selling images. We like the way this person's pictures look, and therefore we will pay to see more of them kind of situation.
Mhm.
And that's kind of fucked up.
It's really fucked up. It's really fucked up because you have particularly these puberty age kids. They're seeing such a push and such a romanticization
Yeah.
romanticized image of a person because these people are famous in their own world. Like whether you have 2 followers or like 14 million followers,
Mm-hmm.
you're famous in your own world because you can control exactly what's going on in that social media construct. And
Yeah.
then I mean being famous in your own world eventually leads to attention seeking because you don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
exactly the same. You want to grow. And that attention seeking leads to a lack of consequence. Like whatever actions you're making to get more people to watch your shit or get more people to like your photo, whatever you're doing, which is usually like a lack of clothes or like something controversial, you have no consequence to that because it's all online and you have that anonymity. And then because there's no lack of or because there is a significant lack of consequence, you become more narcissistic because you think you can get away with it, and you can.
I have a very concrete example. I think this morning I was watching a Moist Critical video on YouTube, and he was talking about this YouTuber couple who went to jail for this video they made where they filmed themselves staying in a Target for 24 hours. And like that was a whole trend back then, right?
Mhm.
But people were faking it. No, this couple genuinely stayed in the store after it closed and then left out an emergency exit at like 3 o'clock in the morning, tripping the alarm also. And then they just posted this online, and like that is exactly what you're talking about, like that lack of consequence, because
Mhm.
clearly that is very illegal.
Yeah.
And like now they're being prosecuted for doing that. And it's so fucking stupid if you like take a step back and look at it. But
No,
it's
it
like
is.
they didn't connect that because they're breaking the law, that they would go to jail for breaking the law.
There's no realism in the world of social media. Like, you can make whatever
Mhm.
you want out of whatever you want. It
Yeah.
is very much selling an image over selling a reality, and I think that
Right.
has such a detriment, particularly to young kids, but not even then. Like, I've seen a significant change in my parents. Like, I remember my
Mm.
parents being significantly different from when, social media wasn't a thing and when it, like, was a big thing. I think my mom has a timer on social media, so she gets kicked off of it whenever, like, she reaches her timer, but that doesn't mean jack shit because she just unlocks it because she knows the password,
Same
and it's
shit
like
I do.
it's such a I don't know, it's so magnetized, like, you can't stay away from it, and even if you
Mhm.
do stay away from it, there's such a community in having access to technology that you're, like, weird for not having it, and if you're not participating in the narcissistic traits, you are participating in competition and comparison, which is
Oh
really
yeah.
the downfall of all of society right now, because even
Even
if
if
you
you
are the
don't
bad guy,
know.
you compare yourselves to the bad guy, which is the bad thing about it, and social media
Yeah.
makes that readily possible.
Or I forgot where I saw this, but there's been like a rise in people just like recording other people like doing normal fucking activities. Like somebody will be looking out the window on a train, and then there's a whole TikTok video with millions of views and hundreds of thousands of likes, and they're like, "Oh my god, this person was so cute. They're romanticizing their train journey." And I'm like, "They're literally sitting on a train.
They're
It's
living their
not that deep."
fucking life.
Yeah, but then I feel like that's such a dangerous like hole to fall into, because I know I have felt this way where it's like, oh, suddenly my entire life needs to conform to a very specific aesthetic, and if it doesn't, then like
What are
there's
you
like
doing
like
wrong?
this, yeah, it's like there's a sense of worth tied to that almost. Do you think that people used to have more determination than they do in today's society though?
Yes.
Because I would agree with that, and I think that's also a determining factor, I guess. Because, like, maybe people are less likely to challenge the societal standards.
Well, it goes back to social media.
Yeah,
What
echo
we're
chamber.
allowed to do.
Yeah.
What we're fed. We don't get different opinions. We don't get challenges because social media feeds us exactly what we think, what our opinion is.
Yeah, because how are you even going to know that there's another side
Mhm.
and that you can have that determination to
Yeah.
power through it if you're never exposed to anybody who's ever done that before?
Mhm. You cannot be determined if you aren't challenged. You have to be challenged at some point in your life. Like,
Mm,
that's an undeniable thing. If you're not challenged, you're not going to have a very solid argument. And that goes with everything. That is everything
yeah.
in your life. You have to be challenged. That is an area in which growth happens. And it doesn't just happen, it happens at like a great rate of success. People have really shitty childhoods and they become
Hmm.
really, really successful because they know what it is to struggle. Like, they know
Yeah.
what a challenge is. And you know what? I was talking to Donnie the other day, and he was talking about how college is really, really different from high school.
Hmm.
And I was like, Well, I mean, it's because people that are in college are there not just because of an obligation, like it's a higher thing and they aren't usually afraid to be challenged. Like they're
Mhm.
in there to learn, and if that means that you
Yes.
have a different opinion and you're pushing it on them, then that's what it means. And maybe their opinion changes or maybe their opinion becomes stronger because of what they learned about the other side. But either way,
Mhm.
that challenge brought something to the table that you didn't have before. And social media is literally an echo chamber. You only hear a very specific narrative. You hear a very specific conversation. Like if you don't agree with something, you're not going to watch things that disagree with you. You're not going to watch things that are a completely separate narrative. You're not going to listen to people that have completely opposite opinions of you because it doesn't support what you believe and that's not what social media
It's
wants.
also way too easy to shut down. Like, if you're watching a TikTok video that you don't agree with, you just swipe up. Takes
Oh
like
yeah.
two muscles.
Mhm.
But if you're like actively in a space in person and you're where you're having a conversation with somebody, then you can't just tune out and choose to say, mm actually, no.
Oh my god, but can we talk about how easy it is for people to walk away from conversations now because of how easy it is for people to just scroll on social media? Like, I've had so many conversations with people where I have an opposing point of view, and they're like, you know what? This isn't even worth it, and just walk away. And I feel like that would not be happening if they couldn't just scroll on social media. They couldn't just shut it
Yeah,
down. Like,
yeah.
yes, it's harder to walk away in a face to face situation, but not by much because whatever's happening on the screen is so normalized. You can just swipe. You can just walk away. You can just say you're done talking. And that's a problem.
That's like actually wild. I can't imagine doing that.
Me
But
either.
I guess we also have the perspective of being in college, so we get our beliefs challenged every single day.
Well, that and everyone knows that I like to argue. I won't walk
Yeah.
away from an argument that I'm losing just because I wanna see how it turns out. And I think that's a good perspective. That's a good perspective. Like,
Yeah.
oh my god.
But
People
it's
hate
like
it.
it's almost like we curate our social media, but now we're also curating our present moment. Like we're
We
curating
are.
our physical life. And that is scary.
There's no reality left. There's no
Yeah.
reality left. Even in the real world, there is no reality left.
Shit.
And it's really fucking sad because I quite like reality. But even with this knowledge, even with the awareness and just knowing that this shit exists, it's still so easy to go back. And that
Oh
should say
yeah.
something about how toxic it really is.
Oh yeah. I spent like 2 hours in bed this morning watching YouTube before I actually got up.
Ditto.
And I'm like, I know that this is awful for me, but will I keep doing it? Yes.
Mhm. No, and that's literally coming from a perspective where we're sitting here talking about this like it's arguably the biggest problem in society today. And
Hmm.
the reality is when we hang up, when we stop talking, when we go back to our normal lives, there's still
It's
everything that there was before.
it's also the intense irony that this podcast will be on social media.
That- oh god. What are we
Like
doing? We're contributing to the downfall of society.
we live in contradiction.
Hypocrisy is real.
And we are
You're
we
the
are
spokesman for
hypocrisy.
hypocrisy.
I mean, self-awareness is step one, right? Surely.
Also, I think you asked me if social media was bad or good, and I said bad because I think that's the overwhelming percentage of like how
Yeah,
it affects
it's
people.
not
It's
black
bad.
and white. Yeah,
However, there
it's
is
not black
this
and white.
portion of social media, the portion that dictates like how to improve your life. Like I wouldn't know about Jordan Peterson. I wouldn't know about Andrew Huberman. I wouldn't know about Dr.
Hmm.
Jean. I wouldn't know about any of these people if it weren't for a social platform that they can be posted on. I don't want to call it social media because I think social media is less the platform and more the mindset. But like there is
Mm.
there's a social platform out there where it is encouraging people to find deeper belief and deeper thought and deeper interaction with the world around them. And I feel like that is a very good thing because, like I said, I wouldn't have access to all of this information if there was no social platform.
That's very true. I feel like it kind of comes down to the mindset of the consumer because I feel like if you like go into social media being like I'm just gonna like scroll and it's gonna fuck me up for the rest of the day, but it'll be enjoyable while I'm doing it, you know? But like, or if you go into it very intentionally, I feel like maybe intention is the thing here because I feel okay, recently I've been trying to like before doing something that I know might not be that great for me, like I will step back and be like, why am I doing this? Like,
Mhm.
if I'm laying in bed watching YouTube, I'll have a moment of like, okay, why am I doing this right now? I would feel better if I did something else. And I'm like, even like I can come back to this, but make my bed and then sit at my desk and finish the video, and that will make me feel better than laying in bed, and that will start my day kind of thing, you know? So
Yeah.
it's like doing things with intention. So I feel like that extends to social media. Like, if you just go on YouTube to like scroll and see what video you can find to like distract yourself or waste time, then that's like the social media mindset. But on the other hand, like, I feel like it's such a good and valuable tool when you're like, okay, let me do this for a purpose real quick. Like, let me get on my YouTube search bar and learn about something.
Mm.
Or like, let me like start a new hobby or find a new task and then YouTube will help you so much, you know?
The issue that I have with that is that you can't have intention when you're brain dead. You really can't.
Okay, what's your definition of brain dead here?
Whatever the fuck's being normalized right now. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
normal to go on YouTube with intention, whereas a couple years ago, you would go on YouTube to find a video. Like, you would go on YouTube to learn how to fix your fucking computer. You'd go on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube to know how to meditate. You would go on YouTube to watch videos on, like, Vine fucked it all up. Anyway, it's very it's very different. It's very different because kids growing up now, they don't know the difference between having intention and just scrolling. They really, really don't. Because they grew
Shit.
up in the age of technology, and you can't tell someone who is brain dead to have intention. You can't. You can't tell someone, particularly a kid that is regularly participating in this act of just scrolling with thousands of other kids their age, not to do it just because your intention matters. Like, I don't think that's going to do anything. Which brings up the question of, should social media be regulated on that level? Like, should we have a law to regulate social media to the level that people do have intention?
Shit. No, that's kind of like actually wild because I feel like my brain exists in like two different modes, right? There's like the mode where I'm like in touch with reality and I'm like choosing mindfully, like I am fully aware of what task I am doing next and why and how this will affect my day, you know? And then there's like the monkey brain that's like, yummy morsel of dopamine, YouTube video, you know,
Ooh.
like the little goblin. And I feel like if I give in and appease the goblin, then like I start feeling like shit because it's like, why am I doing this? Like, why am I here? Why am I alive? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, I
Yeah.
don't feel fulfilled. And then that's like the slipperiest slope of all the slopes. That's like the
Mhm.
black diamond.
I feel like people don't connect that feeling of negativity with social media. I feel like they just feel
Hmm.
depressed and they're like, "Why? Why do I have no purpose? Why do I never feel fulfilled no matter what I do in my life?" Well, that's because you're doing everything except for the right thing.
Yeah,
And it's
it's almost
hard.
like yeah, it's almost like in that first mindset where I'm like controlling my day and I'm like making decisions and doing things intentionally. Like I am in control of my flow of thoughts almost, you
Mhm.
know? But whereas the second I start scrolling through whatever the fuck, it's like now it is no longer me at the helm. It is this algorithm basically that's
Yeah.
feeding me ideas at a very rapid pace. And I'm like you know? Like
Hmm.
it's not me anymore in my dome. It's the social media.
Which
It's
is
the
obviously a
worms.
very negative feeling, particularly when you
Hmm.
get out of it.
No, but the idea of like constantly wanting something, that is so real and so awful to feel because I feel like I've like low key like started to break out of that like constant need where I'm like, okay, just sitting here and like just sitting here. I'll just sit on the bus and just not listening to music, like not doing anything on my phone. Like I'm just sitting there. Like I'm just existing in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like I at that moment do not have an overwhelming sensation of need towards something, which usually I feel like I would have had.
Hmm.
And then
Agreed.
that's a very frustrating way to live, constantly feeling like you want something and you need something, but half the time you don't even know what that something is, and it's just making you miserable.
It's so weird that the seeking out of the fulfillment of that need is what's fucking us up. Because really, if we just
Mhm.
sat with it for a second, just alone in our room, we'd be like, dang, it's fading.
Yeah.
Like that need for something is fading and I'm not even doing anything. But it's such a
Mhm.
push to like, oh, I need to find something that fills this hole, that fills this gap, that you end up doing more harm than good. And it's really fucking ironic because if you
Yeah.
literally just sat there for 3 seconds, you'd be like, oh, okay.
No, I feel like you can't just sit there for 3 seconds because it takes something drastic to knock you out of that.
Yeah, it takes experiencing the world, which is drastic when you have a world that isn't in reality. It's not drastic, it's drastic to today.
Yeah, but you know what I mean? Because, like, if you're in your mindset, then you're going to stay in that mindset until something drastic shakes you out of that mindset and makes you be like, fuck, I need to change something for
100%.
real.
Now, I wonder if you think that the government has a place in making that change. Like literally regulating social media so we have people who know how to think.
Yo, that's such a hard question to answer.
It does go
Because,
back to our initial topic of conversation.
yeah. Okay, when you said that, I immediately thought, once again, of John Stuart Mill. He's what we're learning about in class right now, so he's very relevant. He's at the forefront of my mind.
Mhm.
But I'm pretty sure it was John Stuart Mill that was like, the government cannot control you unless you are doing something that hurts somebody else, essentially. But that's like the very basic, like, bones of his argument, right?
Mhm.
So, but I think we've gotten to a place where social media, we are hurting each other through social media.
100%.
But it's not like it's such a gray area that it's so hard to even conceptualize a piece of legislation that could control social media in any way, shape, or form, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
I feel like I read something the other day though that like there was some country was like, oh no, maybe it was like TikTok was gonna impose like a limit for children under 16, but like they can bypass that limit by clicking the button that says ignore. So it like doesn't fucking do anything anyway.
Oh my god. It's such a conversation of free will, to be honest.
Yeah.
Particularly in our nation. How
Mm-hmm.
are you gonna tell someone that they can't scroll on their little cube of despair?
Yeah. Literally, because it's like, I guess me laying in my bed and scrolling on my little cube of despair isn't directly harming anybody, I suppose. Like, I'm
Except
not
you.
physically. Yeah, but the government can't regulate me harming myself. That was another thing of Mills. He was like, the government can't stop you from hurting yourself. It can only stop you from hurting other people. And then, like, mentally hurting somebody is much harder to see and therefore to regulate than physically harming somebody. So
Mm.
obviously there are all these laws about physically harming people, like assault and all of that stuff, you know? But you don't see the same clarity when it comes to mental pain because the other person can't see it. Like,
Mm.
there's no proof, really. Like, it's such a gray area.
very subjective experience, which is weird
Mm-hmm.
because it is again another twinge of hypocrisy for me because I was talking about activism before and how it shouldn't be such a big deal, but this is a very subjective thing, as is
Mm-hmm.
activism. Whatever you support or don't support, I mean, this is one of those gray areas where should we be focusing on education over social media regulation? But like I said,
Mm.
I think that education is suffering because of the lack of social media regulation and
You
the
know,
advancement of activism.
the way I think we should approach it is I feel like school should be more of an open conversation like this at times.
Oh my god. I agree
Like,
so much.
I feel like, because if we're honest, there is no way that you can just ban social media at this point. You'd have like a fucking revolution or something.
Mhm.
Because that that is, if you think about it, like you're taking away somebody's free will and rights to scroll on their little box of despair if they want to.
Mhm.
But I feel like truly the way to kind of help us reverse the negative effects of social media probably would start with education and open conversation and being like, hey, don't you feel shitty when you lay in bed for 6 hours in the morning? Don't you feel depressed? Don't you feel suicidal? This is maybe why. Like, try, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, make that like a conversation in school or like from very early on, teach kids how to not only memorize and regurgitate information, but also like think for themselves about things. And I think another thing is teach kids to step back and like bring a new perspective to their life. And obviously, I'm not talking like young kids because obviously they're not gonna do that. They have what 2 aisles in their mind palace still. But like I feel like this is especially important when you get into the teenage years.
Or, I mean, honestly, even in that kind of infancy phase, because I feel like there is just an introductory level of thinking for yourself and making
Mm.
decisions and any, like, back to that thing about parents having kids older and fewer of them. You're so protected. They don't even want you to
Yeah.
walk until they know you can.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want you to
It's
think for yourself, they wanna
yeah.
make all of your meals for you, they don't want you to prep it because then they feel like a shitty parent because they have no fulfillment because they scroll on social media and they post all this shit to feel better and it never works. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's this vicious circular argument of what
Yeah.
to fix first.
I think this was in one of my English classes. We I don't remember exactly how we got here, but that's not important. Basically, we got to a point where it was like this question was posed of like because some classes teach Hitler's writings, right? And some people are immediately like, what the actual fuck? You can't do that. But that calls into question like, does, like, should we teach perspectives that we know are awful and terrible for the sake of learning them? Like, does
Yes.
teaching someone something immediately like indoctrinate them somehow? Because,
It gives them a choice, and if you raised a
yeah.
decent human being, they're gonna make the right one.
And that's what Mill is saying. Like, you have to consider every side of the argument. And if you do this, then the truth, the good side of the argument, will prevail. And it will
Absolutely.
prevail very strongly because everybody will be in complete conviction that that is the truth,
Mhm.
you know? But I feel like there's so much censorship and echo chamber activity happening these days that, like, it's so hard to be in that mindset, I guess.
Well, I mean, just look at the books that are being banned from, like, middle school and high school.
Yeah,
Like, these
yeah.
essential books, like, these are important for your understanding of not just humanity, but just emotional interaction, and they're being banned
Mhm.
because they're hard to read.
Yeah, it's literally like yeah. I completely lost my train of thought, but
No, it is and I think it's weird that we're willing to regulate the books that people read, but not the social media that people intake.
mhm.
I feel like
Okay,
that's so weird.
I remember what I was gonna say, because by regulating education like this, like by banning books and whatever, that is like the government deciding what is the truth. And like, how do they know what the truth is? How do they have any claim towards the truth?
They don't. We're moving
Like,
towards a society that is based on convenience and ease of use. It is much easier
yes.
for them to ban those books and to deal with the fucking snowflake of parents that are like, oh my god, this said the N word. We can't have it in schools. Someone's gonna get offended. Like, who the fuck cares? Who
Yeah.
cares?
I feel like
This
it's
is
not,
important.
yeah, I feel like it's not even that, but I feel like there needs to be a very clear distinction that the things you get exposed to as a person, you can there's like you it doesn't immediately become part of your personality. Like your mind and your thoughts are like the barrier of being like, am I going to accept this idea and make it part of who I am, or am I going to reject this?
Mhm.
And will that rejection will make my truth stronger, and I will be better able to argue for my truth, and everything will become better for us as a society.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like it's almost like the barrier, like the thought barrier is just gone in recent times. Like everybody seems to assume that like what you consume will immediately become a part of you. Like if you read Hitler, then you're going
That's
to think like Hitler, which isn't the case at all.
it's probably
It
the
will just
brain dead in them.
it will just open your mind to more perspectives, and you'll be able to use Hitler's arguments like to fend off count. I'm you know what I'm trying to
I know exactly what
say?
you're trying to
Yeah.
say. Like, if you know the bad parts and the good parts, and the good parts will be really, really clear.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Like, you will know how to respond. Like, if somebody brings up a bad idea, you will be able to defend your good idea, your truth,
Which
very
just
strongly,
it
and then
just further
convince more people.
solidifies that challenges are good. It's good
Mm-hmm.
to be challenged, particularly academically or anything involving like radical ideas. You need to be
Yes.
able to back that shit up.
Yup.
You're talking out of your literal asshole. Maybe say something important and I'll respond with words that mean something.
Yeah, literally. Damn, we as a society are fucked.
Oh, hella fucked. We're going down.
You know,
I
I'm
don't
glad
think
I'm
we
here
are
to
though.
watch it happen. I don't think we are either.
We'll figure something out. You know, and the
Yeah,
fact that we're here having this conversation means that there's a sliver of hope somewhere in there.
you know, but there's also the other side. We could be the ones spouting total complete bullshit out of our asses right now.
You know what? That's true. And if
Like,
that's
you
the
never know.
case, it's fun. Fuck it.
But hopefully, we're in our echo chamber of social media. Just
I'm
kidding, that's
hoping,
besides the whole point.
I'm hoping that even honestly, if just one person listens to this, they'll question something like a little bit deeper. You know? Like
Yeah,
question their use of social media or question how they interact with people on a daily basis or just question what's good for them in the long run because it is about you. It's not really about society because that's a very hard thing to control. It is about you.
oh, for sure. And you can't control society without influencing the individual
It
first.
all starts with one. This is why I think it's ridiculous when people are like, you know that there's been a decrease in voting. Like people just don't vote. And I think it's ridiculous when they're like, well, my vote doesn't make a difference. No, you're correct. Yours doesn't. But if everybody votes, then it just might.
Literally.
Your tiny vote does not make a difference. It's not your vote that matters. It's the fact that you do vote that matters.
Yeah, it's like the principle of the thing is more powerful than the thing itself.
Hmm. And I think it's funny that people would be like, I don't want to vote, but I want this to change and this better change and this changes. But do something. Like I realize you're just a civilian, but fucking turn in a ballot. It's a piece of paper. You make it like what are you doing? What are you doing?
Vote by mail, bitch. No, because
I think this is funny because I've literally never voted because I haven't been of age until this year. Or
I
last year, I
mean,
guess.
I had a chance to vote in the last midterm and I didn't even do it. It's so hard to educate yourself politically.
That is something I feel like that should be a heavy chapter because I don't know anything about politics. I'm gonna be like hella honest with you. But I want to be educated so I know how to make decisions. And that's
Yeah.
something that you're poli sci major, so you would be very good at explaining some of that. I feel like that should be a chapter
Yeah, I agree.
because I would just have a list of questions in all honesty. Like I don't
I'll
even know.
compile a
This
PowerPoint
is how
presentation.
bad it is. Like the last time I took a government class was probably like ninth grade,
Yeah.
and I do not remember even just the very, very basics of the three branches of government. Like I don't
Oh
remember that
Lord.
shit. Like I don't have a basic understanding, and that's kind of ridiculous. I do blame myself because I know about it and I'm not doing anything to change it, but I also blame the fact that it was one class to get rid of in high school and that's it.
Mhm. Yup. It's so hard to get that knowledge. And then I feel like with politics, especially social media, is also quite detrimental because you are so stuck in your echo chamber. How the fuck are you going to understand your argument and your perspective on very important political issues?
You're not. It's just
You're
not
just
gonna
not
happen.
going to, yeah. And so it's almost like who can influence the youth the fastest because chances are they won't look into the other side. They'll just
And
accept
that's
what you're telling them.
that's so shitty. That's so
That's
shitty just from a
fucking
political level,
dangerous.
from a democracy level. Like we are voting for these people, but we don't know what the fuck we're voting for. Ever.
Democracy is based on differing opinions and challenge. Like,
There's
you
no
will
challenge.
have,
There's no different opinions. You're just
yeah, if
fed.
everybody has the same perspective, welcome to hell. Like,
And this is why we have such I mean, that whole Trump Biden thing was a really big thing. Like people were
yeah.
crying on the streets. There are still people that have like fuck Biden signs up and like all kinds of stuff. All kinds of stuff. And that happened what, 3 years ago? 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. A while ago. There are people that are generally like they're just they're catastrophizing. They didn't get what they wanted and now it's terrible. But it's only terrible because they have no sense or understanding of how honestly democracy works. Because someone is going to win and it's not always going to be who you want to win.
Yeah. But I feel like if you understand the three branches of government, like you will know the president is a very important position. That was a horrendous noise that you just made.
My bad.
Like the president is a very important and crucial position with a lot of power, but there are two other branches, and and we are very clearly set up in the very constitution to have that separation of powers, that like checks and balances system to make sure that one branch of government cannot basically become a tyranny, a tyrannical ruler.
It's so shitty that I couldn't even have a conversation about this. I want to learn more about this. I hated government when I was a kid, but I it's a necessity.
Okay, when I was young, even when I was like not very young, like a teenager in high school and like beginning of college even, I was like I hate politics. I hate like interacting with politics on any level. I was like it makes me anxious, like I hate it. It is awful. And then I took a political science class and I was like, hold the fuck on. I kind of love this actually because when I feel like when you understand it, it makes it become so much more interesting and like rich and deep. And you're like, I understand like why people have these perspectives. And like, you get more experience like arguing your point. So I feel like now I stay much calmer when I'm having a debate with somebody. Whereas before, I'd like let my emotions get the better of me
Hmm.
sometimes and just be like, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like, this is anxiety inducing.
This
Like,
is stupid. I don't want to
yeah,
do this.
literally. And I'm like, no, it's not. Because I understand what I'm talking about now and I can defend my point of view to somebody who asks me to do so. So I don't come out looking like the idiot in the conversation, you know?
Yeah, not just that, but the conversation itself is an act of like
It's very enriching.
Academia. Like you're learning something.
Hmm.
You always come away learning something if you're willing to have a conversation.
Yeah, but it's so interesting to me that once this like I used to hate like debate and like when people would argue like their different opinions, but now like my major is pretty much based on that.
Which is,
Like
oh, it's so
it's
interesting.
based on understanding politics and the differences that are so very inherent in politics.
I think it's
And
I think it's shitty that college encourages original thought and deeper thought like that, but high school there's no opportunity for it because you have a test to take.
mhm.
Which you do in college as well, to clarify. You do have tests to take in college as well, but there's always a conversation, I want to say, depending on your professor. But
Yeah.
every college class that I've been in, there's always been a conversation to have, particularly if you're willing to have it. Because very rarely
Mhm.
will I lift my hand and ask a question. My professor will be like, no, let's not talk about that. Like it's a
Yeah, I
group
feel like
discussion, it's deeper thought.
in higher like once you get to like your last 2 years of college, like you're in those smaller like seminar kind of style classes where like you are supposed to raise your hand and start polarizing discussion. Like that is the entire point basically in some of these classes. And like that is the mode of learning, you know? And like every assignment is like geared towards that as well. So I find it very cool, very interesting.
It is very interesting. So now that we've covered how social media affects our lives on a very general level, it's time to go into the specifics with the next episode on how social media affects journalism and the government.
And that's how this podcast will be structured every time. First, we'll have an episode where we throw around our ideas and opinions about a certain topic that we pick, and then in the episodes following that one, we'll narrow it down and we'll have much more structured and researched conversations about the points that we found the most interesting.
Tune in every other Wednesday at 5 p.m. for more.